In 1992, Brussels changed the rules. Emission standards arrived. British truck makers thought they could adapt. They couldn't. Every few years, standards got stricter. Manufacturers couldn't sell trucks that didn't comply. By 2008, London charged £200 per day to drive old trucks. Within 16 years, an entire industry was extinct. This is how environmental law destroyed Britain's truck manufacturing forever. The 1960s and 70s were different times. British trucks owned the roads. Bedford dominated the light and medium segments with over 100,000 units per year. Leyland was massive. Foden was legendary. ERF was small but respected. These companies built trucks to last decades. Their engines were simple. Their designs were durable. A Gardner engine was legendary for running 1 million miles without major overhaul if you maintained it. British drivers trusted these machines. By 1980, things were starting to change. Bedford was building fewer trucks each year. Leyland was struggling. Foden had entered receivership, but nobody thought these problems were permanent. They thought it was just the economy. They thought customers would come back. They had no idea what was coming. In 1992, the European Union introduced Euro 1. This was the first unified EU-wide emission standard for heavy-duty trucks across Europe. It required diesel engines to limit their nitrogen oxide and particulate matter emissions. Britain had national smoke opacity standards before this, but Euro 1 changed the game. It sounded simple on paper. In reality, it changed everything. Here is the critical detail. Euro 1 only applied to new trucks sold after 1992. It did not retroactively make existing trucks illegal, but manufacturers could only sell new models that met the standard. This meant developing new engines or redesigning old ones. Most modern trucks could meet Euro 1 with modifications, but British trucks were different. They used engines designed in the 1960s and 70s. The Gardner engine, for example, had been in production since the 1950s. It was legendary. The Gardner block could run for 1 million miles without major overhaul. It was reliable. It was efficient. But it was not designed for emission controls. The real problem was not catalytic converters. It was fuel injection. Gardners used simple mechanical injection systems. Euro 3 and beyond required high-pressure electronic fuel, systems like common rail injection and electronic control units. You cannot fit modern high-pressure injectors into a Gardner block designed 50 years earlier. The physical pressures would destroy it. For manufacturers like Foden and ERF, the decision was simple. A retrofit that cost thousands per engine on a truck that sold for maybe £10,000 made no sense economically. British operators preferred imported trucks instead. German trucks like Mercedes-Benz had newer engines. They could meet Euro 1 without losing performance. The damage was done immediately. By the mid-1990s, British truck sales had collapsed. Leyland was still producing around 10,000 trucks per year, but this was less than half its earlier capacity. Bedford was approaching its final years. Foden was in decline. In 1996, Euro 2 arrived. The limits became stricter again. This time, the characters separated petrol and diesel standards. Diesel limits were slightly less stringent than petrol, but the overall effect was the same. Older designs became harder to certify. Euro 2 came at exactly the wrong time for British manufacturers. PACCAR, an American company, had acquired Foden in 1980. Foden was struggling under new management. The company had a workforce of 3,000 in the 1960s. By 1986, it had only 450 employees. Euro 2 made Foden's situation worse. The company could not afford to redesign its entire product line to meet the new standard. Bedford was heading toward closure. General Motors owned Bedford through its UK operations. The truth was more specific than just emissions coming. Bedford had launched the TM range, a modern truck designed to compete with the Volvo F10 and F12. The TM was technically sound, but it arrived when the market was already shifting toward Volvo and Scania. Fleet operators preferred the Volvo F10. They preferred the Scania 2 Series. The TM lost the competition. By the mid-1980s, GM made the decision. The company shut down Bedford's heavy truck plant in 1986. Emission standards were indeed coming, but the real reason was that the TM range had already failed commercially. GM did not want to invest more capital into a truck that customers did not want, especially when new standards would require expensive redesigns. In 2000, Euro 3 was introduced. This was the turning point. Euro 3 required electronic engine management systems. It required onboard diagnostics. Old trucks from the 1970s and 80s simply could not be fitted with this technology. You cannot bolt a modern computer system onto an engine designed 50 years earlier. By 2000, Leyland had already been acquired by Dutch company DAF in 1987. DAF bought Leyland to gain British market presence, but the marriage was unhappy. The company went into administration in 1993. Leyland was spun out as an independent company through a management buyout. In 1996, PACCAR acquired DAF Trucks. 2 years later, in 1998, PACCAR acquired Leyland Trucks. This American company was now the owner of Britain's last independent truck manufacturers. Foden was still operating, but barely. The company was experimenting with different engines. It eventually switched to Cummins engines. This helped meet Euro 3, but it meant Foden was building trucks based on American designs, not British designs anymore. ERF was producing only around 1,000 trucks per year. The company could not compete. ERF's strength had always been customization and specialty vehicles, but Euro 3 required capital-intensive engine development. ERF simply did not have this capital. PACCAR was a smart operator. The company knew that Euro 3 and upcoming standards would require massive investment. PACCAR consolidated. Instead of maintaining separate Leyland, DAF, and Foden brands with separate engines and designs, PACCAR used one platform across all brands. In 2000, PACCAR consolidated Foden production at the Leyland plant in Lancashire. The Sandbach plant, where Foden had built trucks since the 1950s, closed for Foden production. For British truck enthusiasts, this was symbolic. Foden trucks were no longer being built in Sandbach. They were DAF trucks with Foden badges. The only difference was the paint. British truck design was dead. By 2005, Euro 4 arrived. This standard forced the industry toward new technologies. Most manufacturers chose selective catalytic reduction, or SCR. This is the AdBlue system. A chemical called AdBlue is injected into the exhaust to convert nitrogen oxides into harmless nitrogen and water. Some manufacturers also used diesel particulate filters, or DPFs, which physically trap soot, but both systems required complete engine redesigns from the ground up. For old trucks still in operation, retrofitting either system was prohibitively expensive. Many fleet operators made a business decision. Instead of retrofitting old trucks to meet Euro 4, they simply scrapped them and bought new ones. A new DAF truck, a new Volvo, or a new Scania, not a British truck, because British trucks were now just variants of DAF and Leyland designs anyway. By 2005, PACCAR made an announcement. Foden production would cease entirely by 2006. The company wanted to free up manufacturing capacity at the Leyland plant to build more DAF trucks instead. This was the final statement. Foden was no longer viable. The last Foden truck rolled off the production line in July 2006. It was an 8x4 rigid. The truck was immediately donated to the British Commercial Vehicle Museum. This was more than just the end of a model. It was the end of 150 years of Foden truck manufacturing. The company that had built the first commercially successful diesel truck in 1931 was dead. ERF was still operating, barely. The company had been sold to Western Star in 1996. Western Star then sold ERF to MAN in 2000. MAN discovered a massive accounting fraud scandal at ERF shortly after the acquisition. The fraud crippled the brand's viability. MAN kept ERF as a badge product for a few years, but the damage was done. By 2002, the Middlewich factory closed. The company that had been founded in 1933 was no longer building trucks in Britain. MAN discontinued the ERF badge entirely in 2007. In 2008, Euro 5 arrived with selective catalytic reduction technology requirement. By then, there were no British truck manufacturers left to comply. Leyland was producing DAF trucks, Foden was gone, ERF was gone. Seddon Atkinson was absorbed into IVECO years earlier. In 2013, Euro 6 became mandatory. This standard dropped nitrogen oxide limits for heavy-duty trucks from 2.0 grams per kilowatt hour under Euro 5 to just 0.4 grams per kilowatt hour. That is an 80% reduction. It was catastrophic for engine designers. Only the most modern trucks could meet this standard. Any truck from before 2008 was basically finished. But the real killer came earlier. London introduced its Low Emission Zone in 2008. The LEZ charged older trucks £200 per day to enter. This was not a blanket ban, but for a fleet operator running old British trucks from the 1980s, charging £200 every time the truck entered, London made the vehicle uneconomical. Fleet operators scrapped their old trucks rather than pay daily LEZ fees. This financial pressure, more than any outright ban, finished off the remaining old British trucks still in service. Today, there are no British truck manufacturers. Leyland still exists, but it is owned by PACCAR and produces DAF trucks. The Foden badge is gone, the ERF brand is gone, Seddon Atkinson is gone. The vehicles that once defined British trucking have disappeared. This was not a failure of engineering. British trucks were excellent machines. They were durable. They were reliable. They lasted longer than European or American trucks. The problem was regulation. Emission standards changed faster than British manufacturers could adapt. The cost of compliance exceeded the profit margins of small manufacturers. In a way, emission standards did their job. They reduced air pollution. They forced trucks to become cleaner. The particulate matter from diesel trucks is down 96% since 1993. Nitrogen oxide levels have fallen dramatically. The air in British cities is cleaner because of these standards. But the cost was paid by an entire industry. British truck manufacturing, which had thrived for over a century, was destroyed, not by competition from better trucks, by regulatory requirements that small companies could not meet. From 1992 to 2013, emission standards made British trucks uneconomical to build. Bedford closed in 1986. Foden produced its last truck in 2006. ERF closed in 2002 and dropped the brand in 2007. London's Low Emission Zone finished the job. By charging £200 per day for old trucks, the LEZ made them impossible to operate profitably. The trucks were not illegal, they were simply too expensive. Today, Leyland produces DAF trucks. The engines are designed in the Netherlands. British truck manufacturing is gone. British trucks are extinct. Only the memories remain.